What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, back with more Bible reading. Alrighty, so we're getting into Genesis chapter 22 today, and in the last chapter we had the birth of Isaac, and then Hagar and Ishmael were sent away because of some tension with Sarah and Isaac, essentially. And then Abraham and Abimelech had just a little bit of trouble over who this one well belonged to. But ultimately they kind of struck a deal and everything was okay. But it did remind me that Abraham was not living in Canaan. He's in fact living in the land of the Philistines. But anyway. So, with chapter 22, here we go. Verse 1. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. "Abraham," God called. "Yes," he replied, "here I am." "Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you." Also, not totally sure on that pronunciation of that place, but whatever. I didn't want to call it Moria because that would make me think Lord of the Rings. But, so, boy, how hard this must be. Because, I mean, this was, like, God said, okay, this is your promised son, who you're going to have many descendants through. And yet, I want you to sacrifice him. But anyway, verse 3. The next morning, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day of their journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. "Stay here with the donkey," Abraham told the servants. "The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back." Okay, so quite a bit of preparation involved in this. I mean, yeah, if you're going to go... It doesn't really say how far this place is from where he was. But, you know, it's assumed it's at least a little while. In any case, he tells his servants, "All right, Isaac and I, my son and I are going to go over here and worship. We're going to give some offerings and do stuff like that, and then we'll be back." It's kind of the cover, I would say, for the fact that he's going to go and do as God said and sacrifice his son. But anyway, although Isaac might not have even known what was supposed to happen, so maybe that was kind of code speak for everybody but him. Anyway, verse 6. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "We have the fire and the wood," the boy said, "but where is the sheep for the burnt offering?" So Isaac's... I don't know if he's catching on here, but he's at least curious, like, okay, we have all the stuff to make the fire for the offering, but what are we going to offer? Also, carried the... How does one carry fire? I mean, maybe... I don't know. It could have been some sort of lantern or candle or something, maybe. I don't know. It just seems weird saying that he carried the fire. But in any case, so... As an answer to Isaac's questioning, Abraham responds in verse 8... God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham answered. And they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. So, Abraham's like, yeah, there's going to be a lamb provided by God. Don't worry. We'll have a sacrifice. He's probably thinking, well, at that point, he's probably thinking to himself, oh, there's going to be a sacrifice. If you could consider, my only human son to be a lamb, then sure, there's going to be a sheep for the sacrifice, all right. But he was probably just not trying to give away to Isaac what he was doing, because otherwise Abraham might have resisted and or ran away. But when it gets to the point of tying up Isaac on the wood for the offering, you really gotta wonder what's going through Isaac's head at this point. Like, this was not common practice, at least not for Abraham. But, so Abraham gets ready to kill Isaac for the sacrifice. And, cue dramatic Hollywood-style moment where he, has the knife drawn and is ready, and then, Abraham hears an angel, Abraham, yes? I mean, that might be a little over-dramatized, but that's the impression that you're supposed to get. Because, Abraham... The point is that Abraham was willing to go through with it. But he got stopped at the last second. Anyway, verse 12. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. So, the angel's like, all right, that's enough. You can stop. You have shown that you are loyal and faithful. Test is over. You passed. Good job. So anyway, then verse 13. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. So, this is actually where another common name, title thing of God comes from. Although, a lot of times, it's... Okay, so Hebrew is a very different language from English. In fact, Hebrew... I don't know for sure about, modern Hebrew, but at least, old Hebrew, especially biblical times Hebrew, didn't have any vowels or anything like that. So, in translating, sometimes the same name, since it's only consonants, will have like different vowels and stuff placed there and different ways of people pronouncing it, essentially. Because I've heard Jehovah Jireh far more than this particular way of pronouncing it, where it's more like wise, like. But Yahweh and Jehovah are both, ways to say God's name, essentially. Both can be extrapolated from the original Hebrew spelling, essentially. And then the other part is just saying, provider or something like that. But anyway, so Isaac does not get sacrificed. Abraham's loyalty has been proven. And it turns out God actually did provide a sheep, more specifically a ram, for the sacrifice. And so, of course, that place was given the name. In here it says Yahweh Jireh. Again, Jehovah Jireh is far more common. It's used a lot more, essentially. But anyway, now we get to verse 15. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says. Because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies. And through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. So, now that Abraham has passed the test of loyalty, God essentially, reaffirms his covenant once more, and it seems far more definitive that it's like, all right, you have done everything I have asked of you. Now I'm really going to start making good on this promise of you having a lot of descendants and, them becoming great and, living well, having a lot of land and all those kinds of things that had been promised so many times before. So then verse 19. Then they returned to the servants and traveled back to Beersheba, where Abraham continued to live. Soon after this, Abraham heard that Milcah, his brother Nahor's wife, had borne Nahor 8 sons. The oldest was named Uz. The next oldest was Buz, followed by Kemuel, the ancestor of the Arameans, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. In addition to these eight sons from Milcah, Nahor had 4 other children from his concubine Rumah. Their names were Teba, Gaham, Nahash, and Makah. Anyway, lots of names. Sorry if I'm not the greatest at pronouncing those names and whatnot. Okay, so I think we had heard a little bit about, some of these descendants, or in a previous genealogy, there was definitely some mention of Nahor, in his relationship to Abraham and whatnot. But, because of Abraham moving away, there was... We hadn't really heard from the rest of the family for a little while. But in any case, Abraham just kind of goes back. Everything's good. His brother clearly had a lot of, 12 sons in total? So, he's... I wonder if that's supposed to be kind of a glimpse of, the level of prosperity, level of fruitfulness, whatever you want to call it, that Abraham, or at least Isaac, would eventually have as well. But anyway, that actually kind of wraps things up for this chapter. So, Abraham once again proves that he's faithful. And now it seems like God is really emphatic on the point of, making good on his previous promises to Abraham. I don't know. It certainly seemed almost like it could have been a... All right, I want to make sure that Abraham is still going to be faithful, and not just because of his son. He's gotten the son that I promised him, great. But is he going to turn away now because of that? Like some people, when they get too much, or they, get whatever they ultimately seek, some people turn away from God and think they don't need him anymore. That's a very common recurring theme within the Bible, especially in relation to God's people collectively later on. So, the fact that Abraham kind of passed that test and didn't, forsake God's commands for that reason, kind of all the more speaks to, his own faith. And in a sense, his righteousness as well. And anyway, so that does it for now. There was also a little note about Abraham's brother, because we hadn't really, I don't know if it's because, but we hadn't really heard anything from other parts of the family for a while. So in case you were curious, there you go. Well, Abraham's brother had 12 sons. That may be a little more important as we get into upcoming chapters. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, that's it for now. So, as always, like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it with others if you want them to see. Look down in the description for info on other social media pages and how to find and follow those. And of course, leave comments down below all that with any thoughts that you have regarding this chapter, other Bible stuff, other video ideas, whatever you have for me. Let me know down below. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I will see you for the next one. But until then, stay cool, people.